Well, good evening. So like Mark just said, I do teach at St. Francis. I force my students to be interactive. So if you don't have a piece of paper, you're going to get a piece of paper. So if you would, take a piece of paper and hand it around. I usually don't have my students sitting in rows. We usually sit in circles, or we just sit randomly around a room wherever they're comfortable. So this is a little different for me. As well as having a mic. I don't think I've ever given a lecture with a mic on, so we'll see how this goes. The talk that I'm going to give you is adapted from a lecture that I give in one of my classes. So I teach a class called Sustainable Eating at St. Francis, and we cover a wide variety of topics. When I originally sent that description to Mark, it was actually right before I was going to give this lecture to my class, and they said this is boring, so it's tweaked a little bit. They're brutally honest with me, to say the least. They're like, what's that?
The word killer does it.
Yeah. So we're still going to be talking about foods, but we're going to be talking about not so much on just, if you came here tonight to figure out what's the latest diet and what you should be eating or should not be eating, that's not what this talk is really geared towards now. It's kind of thinking about foods on all levels. So as you consume food, how does it affect you on that cellular, molecular level, but also that food that you eat, where you spend your food dollars, how does that affect the individual, the family, the community, the world? So kind of looking at it, trying to look at food on all levels and what ramifications it has as you eat that food. The wonderful thing, and we talk about this a lot in my class, is it's something that we all do. We all have this in common. It's not unique to any one person or group. We all eat what we eat, where we eat, how often we eat, how much we eat is dependent on the person. But this is definitely something that we all have in common. So like Mark said, I teach in the kinesiology nutrition department. I also have an appointment within the biology department. So this is what I talk about a lot. This is what my classes are based on, is health, nutrition, movement, those types of things. But briefly, my grandparents were both farmers. Both sets of my grandparents were farmers. So I've grown up around livestock, and when I would go visit my grandparents. I grew up in the city, but we'd go visit my grandparents, and my grandfathers were more than happy to put me and my brothers to work. So it's like, hey, you're 16, come do this. But even living in the city, my parents, we had a huge garden. My parents canned from that garden. So it's always kind of been part of my core, not until though, as I got older and had my own family, did I start to question where was food coming from? Why did we do the same things that we did? I mean, when my wife and I, when we first got married, cherry pop was fruit. Like, oh, we got our 6 servings of fruit today. We had cherry pop twice. So that was fruit. Our son was born, as a lot of new mothers do. They worry, they stress, they want the best for their children. So my wife started reading and researching and coming up with all these things, and all of a sudden the food that I was eating, I could no longer eat anymore. What happened? What happened? This was good for us last week, but now this week we're not allowed to eat it. So she started, she was coming to the library. She was checking out books. She was on the internet. She was constantly researching, figuring out what should I eat, what should I not eat. Why should we eat this? Why should we not eat this? Why is this supposed to be good for us? Why is this considered unhealthy for us? And then ultimately it led us to the point where we moved out to the country. We bought a little land, and we currently have a small little pasture-based farm. So my wife and our 5 children, we grow a majority of the food that we currently consume. And what we don't grow, we try to find others who are growing it locally as well, and we try to do the best that we can. You know, we're not 100%, but we try to do what we can when we can. So this is my little family here. So my wife Courtney, my oldest son Jonah, Paige, Adelaide, Lily, and Squire. So they're out there with us day in and day out. Like I said, my grandparents were farmers, my parents were not farmers. So I would go on the weekends every so often to visit with the grandparents, and they would put me to work, but I didn't really know why they did what they did or how they did what they did. So a lot of what we're doing right now is pure trial and error. You know, we're talking to people, we're asking questions, we're reading books, and we're trying to figure it out, but a lot of it is we're out there at 2 a.m. sitting in the mud like, this did not work. What just happened? There's a cow running around, and what just happened there? So to start it off, title of the talk is Killer Food. So I just wanted to put this up here for you to think about. 1900, 2010, and you can see the top 10 causes of death in those years. So in 1900, a large chunk of why people died was considered other. You got ran over by your horse. That falls underneath the other category. Cancer, heart disease, cerebrovascular disease, those we would consider, more of the lifestyle, diet-related diseases, potential diseases. Whereas you look at 2010, other has shrunk quite a bit, but if we look at cancer and heart disease, it's grown. Should be no surprise there. I make my students define food. You have a piece of paper in front of you. Hopefully you have a writing utensil in front of you. What is food? And it's very different for a lot of us. Like I said, we usually sit seminar style because I want them to discuss. It forces them to think. It forces them to accept other people's ideas, even if they don't agree with them. So we can't obviously do that here, but if you can, define what food is to you. And then along those same lines, if you could write down on the piece of paper, what did you eat today? Where did you eat it? And who did you eat it with? I'll give you a couple seconds, a couple minutes to write that down. All right. So if you're not finished, you can keep working on it. I'm going to go on here for a second. You guys know what that is? Those are chickens that have gone wild. So walking through the pasture, and you find where some chickens have. Our chickens are free range. We let them run all over. They have a chicken coop with nest boxes where they're supposed to lay their eggs. We had some chickens that decided they want to lay their eggs right in the middle of the cow pasture, and we found this. So right in the middle of nice tall green grass, you find about 12 and a half eggs. So the purpose of food. So you just defined food. So what is its purpose? On the simplistic basic level, it's because to solve hunger. You're hungry, therefore you eat. So you're then no longer hungry. But if we look at it at a broader perspective, food should heal and nourish us at all levels of life, on that molecular level, but also on an individual level, and even on a bigger community type level. It should bring people together. Families used to cook meals together. They used to harvest the food together, prepare the food together, and eat the food together. So there's a lot of time that they spent together just with food. Today, food is convenient. Just right out here in the complex that we have here, how many restaurants are available. We have a beautiful grocery store right over there with all kinds of food, so it's prevalent. It should build up and not tear down. So not only the individual person, the food you should eat should build you up and not tear you down, but on the community level as well. Hopefully we're building the community through food. And then my students said that food should be real. That was their big thing that they really talked about and they kept coming back to in class, is that it should be real. And I said, well, what do you mean real? And they said, you should know what it is. So when you read that label, if you don't know whatever that is on the label, should you be eating it? And that was something that I didn't really think of, but to them that was a big point. So everyone eats every day, like I just said. What we choose to eat and where we choose to eat it can have drastic ramifications. Personally, individually, health-wise, but also bigger from a community standpoint. And then what we classify as food. What is food? What is it? It seems so simple that it's just food. Why do you keep beating this to death? What is food? What do we classify as food? The fact that we have to have food labels, what does that say about how far we've come or not come? We have all these labels: organic, GMO, non-GMO, pasture raised, free range. What does any of that mean? Or is it just simply terms? Is it marketing? Is it those types of things? Shouldn't it just say food? Like you go to the grocery store, it's food here. I mean, it's something that's so simple, but we make it complex. And then how important is that food to you and the food that you eat to you? Where do you rank that in your priority? We sell lots of eggs because we have lots of chickens. We charge $3.50 for a dozen eggs. We were part of a farmer's market at one point in time until our kids, the schedule became too hectic. They were in activities and we were missing out on activities because one of us had to take the kids somewhere, the other one was at the market. So we just sell from our farm now. So $3.50, we'd be at the market and someone would come up to us and be like, $3.50, that's ridiculous. Like, you're holding a $2 bottle of pop, but you're not willing to spend $3.50 on a dozen eggs that this 6-year-old child picked up this morning and put in the carton to bring here. So obviously they don't place the importance on those eggs that we did. We knew we were out there at 2 a.m. We were out there when it was cold. We were out there when it was hot. So what importance does the individual, does society, does whoever place on that food that they're eating or purchasing? So here's some of the different levels that we talk about in class. That cellular level, organ level. So cells make the organs, organs make the individuals, individuals make the family, and the families make the communities. Food plays a role, whether we're on that microscopic level or on the macroscopic level. So thinking about food just beyond, I eat it. And I eat good food, therefore I'm healthy. I eat bad food, therefore I'm not as healthy. So trying to think of it on a bigger scale, on a bigger picture. A chart that we use in class, just thinking about it, again, just broader. It does have, environmental issues. There's affordability issues, the socio-cultural well-being, resilience. What if we do have a drought this summer? What does that do to the food supply here in Northeast Indiana? What does that do to your individual food supply? Are we able to withstand that? How can we prevent that drought? How can we weather that drought? What can we do to ensure that we still have food? Living where we live, it's one of the things that we don't really spend a lot of time worrying about or thinking about because food is fairly prevalent where we are. Just another picture of chickens. So you can see again, they're out there on the grass. They love it out there. They peck around, they scratch around, they find the bugs, the worms, and they're just comfortable out there. Anybody remember what an enzyme is from freshman biology? No. Never thought you'd hear that word again, did you? So an enzyme and a substrate. So a substrate is your food. So you eat the food, you eat the substrate. The enzyme is part of your digestive system. So technically an enzyme is a biological catalyst. It makes the process more efficient. So we're able to break down the food, the substrate, into our products. And the enzyme does this in an efficient manner. So we don't have to put a lot of energy from your body. We don't have to put a lot of ATP into the system to be able to break that food down into a usable product. So these are products, these are sugars, these are amino acids, these are fats that your body is able to assimilate into itself and use to build itself back up. So I bring up enzymes is because enzymes in their substrate, you can see they fit together like a lock and a key. So we all have keys in our pocket. Mark is probably the only one that has the key to lock this door. We all have keys, but his are the only one that fit together perfectly. So going back to food, your body over time, all of our bodies over time have developed these enzymes which can break down specific foods. So lactose, milk sugar, has the enzyme lactase. Lactase and lactose fit together perfectly. Only lactase can break down lactose, can break down that milk sugar. Somebody who's lactose intolerant, either they don't have enough lactase or the lactase that they do produce doesn't fit with lactose perfectly like it should, and therefore they become lactose intolerant. They're not able to break down that milk sugar. So going back to your definition of food, if we skip the evolutionary process where lactase and lactose were able to fit together and we create some type of food in a lab situation and we don't go through that process, our body might not have the enzymes available to break that down. Or it won't fit together perfectly, and the byproducts of that substrate might not be usable. So you could be ingesting the food, but your body's not able to use it. So then it's for nothing. We're not able to use those byproducts, the products of the substrate, to build ourselves back up. So just skipping the necessary processes that the body needs in order to be able to break down food. Another field which is very popular right now is epigenetics. So epigenetics says that due to environmental factors, we can negatively or positively express our genetic potential. So based on what you eat, based on the chemicals you're exposed to, stress you have in your life, all of those types of things, you can potentially turn on or turn off your genetic potential based on outside factors. So epi meaning outside, genetics outside the genome. You can affect that genetic potential. And food is one way that we can either negatively or positively express your own genetic potential. So just a diagram here. So with your genetic makeup, you have your DNA. On the outside of the cells, we have these epigenetic markers, which are affected by your environment. They're affected by the food you eat, the amount of stress you have, toxins. I mean, you can see there's a whole list of them over here. Exercise, mindset, are you happy? Are you sad? How much light you have. So right now, Northeast Indiana, how much light do we have? When we see the sun, don't you just want to jump up and down? Yes, absolutely. So starting to get the cabin fever, we're starting to be miserable. So we need that light for lots of different reasons, but the light actually affects your genetic makeup as well. Something that we don't really think about or haven't really thought about. Drugs can affect the genetic makeup, hormones, relationships, herbs, supplements, anything that you put into your body or is around your body or that's going to affect your mental well-being can affect which genes are turned on and which genes are turned off. And we can change that by those different factors. So this pathway can be dependent on food. So methyl groups. If you eat the right foods, you will be able to make the methyl groups which attach to your DNA. So it says here, folic acid, B vitamins, methathione are components in making that methyl. We need this methyl group to be able to activate the gene. So if we don't have the methyl groups being put into our body through the food that we're eating, we're not going to be able to turn on that gene. If we can't turn on that gene, now you're not going to express that characteristic. So You have the genetic material there, but we just don't have the on switch to make it happen. So these are pretty popular supplements, especially folic acid and B vitamins. Most people have heard of those. With supplements, a big thing is the quality of the supplement. You know, with supplements, you really do get what you pay for. There's a lot of reputable, good companies out there, but there's also a lot of companies that are not quite as reputable. So it's just doing your research to find out which company is good, which company is using quality products. You know, with supplements, my opinion is if you can get it from your food instead of a supplement, that's the better way to do it, because food, the body again can more easily assimilate that into what it needs to. You guys know what this is? Turkeys. You ever raised turkeys? Anybody in here? They are dumb. They will stand on their own food and starve to death. So you gotta we learned this the hard way, like everything else we've learned. You gotta put a couple chickens in with the turkeys when they're little. Then they'll figure out how to eat and they'll figure out how to drink water. Otherwise, they will dehydrate and they will starve to death with fresh, clean water and plenty of food. So then you get them outside and they're happy as can be and they eat lots of grass and bugs and everything else. But they are not intelligent creatures. They're fun to watch, but they're not intelligent. Who likes sugar? Okay, who doesn't like sugar? Which should probably be the correct question. We got a scan here of the brain. Brain that's been exposed to sugar, a brain that's been exposed to cocaine. You can see if we took these away, they look pretty similar, right? So the same areas of the brain that are activated from cocaine are the same areas of the brain that are activated when you ingest sugar. So like it says there, it's not your fault. It's addicting as can be. If you read labels, usually a lot of food has sugar in it. Food that you wouldn't think has sugar in it has sugar in it. So if you're not a label reader, start reading the labels and you'll be surprised how much sugar is in your food and what foods have sugar. You're like, why would they put sugar in here? So you go back to it. You know, your body craves sugar. If you go back to caveman days, you know, when the caveman came across that berry patch, he ate as many berries as he possibly could because he didn't know when he was going to get berries again. Today, I mean, sugar's everywhere. It's cheap too. You know, you go get bag of white sugar at the grocery store, it's not very expensive. So you're addicted to it, your body loves it, your body craves it, your body needs it, according to your brain. You have to have more. Have you ever tried to take yourself off of sugar and not eat sugar for a while? It's awful, isn't it? It's very difficult. Again, it's one of those things you got to do your research. Some are good, some are bad. What I recommend to people is going with the honeys and the maple syrups and the sorghums and those types of things. More the plant-based sugar. If you're going to substitute for white sugar, use the plant-based sugars instead. Yeah, that's what I suggest to people. Some of those sugar substitutes are good. You got to do your research and see which ones, how they're made, where they're made, those types of things. I mean, I challenge my students. You know, most of my classes are Monday, Wednesday, or Tuesday, Thursday. Sometimes we have Monday, Wednesday, Friday classes. So if we meet on Monday, 1 to 2:15, I say you can't eat sugar until we meet again at Wednesday at 1 o'clock. And I say you'll get 10 bonus points. I'll give them some kind of carrot to have them do this. And they all come in with their tails between their legs on Wednesday, and I failed. Like, it's not your fault. Did that to prove to you how hard it is. And some of them just give up right away. No way. Not doing it. I already know I can't do this. I drink 3.
Natural sugars like from fruits and stuff?
No, I just challenge them to stay away from the white processed sugar.
Okay.
Yeah, so no, if you're eating apples and oranges and you're putting maple syrup on your yogurt in the morning, more power to you. Most of my students aren't doing that. So it's this addictive cycle. So your body likes it, it craves it, so it tells you it needs it. And we just keep going and going and going and going. I mean, think about everything that you really like. Think about the holidays. We just had the holidays a couple months ago. How much kale did you eat at the holidays? Maybe you did. Good for you. I didn't. You know, I had all the good stuff that I possibly could. My wife makes fantastic sugar cream pie. I ate as much sugar cream pie as I could because I knew I'm not going to get it again for a while. So the kids and I, we just pigged out. And if you look at the trend here, sugar consumption over the last 300 years, 1700 to 2000, you can see minimal to spiking our way upwards. And then we also have the obesity trend line as well. What happens to sugar that your body doesn't use? Stores it as adipose tissue. So your body, again, that evolutionary process. You're the caveman, you find the blueberry patch, you're going to eat pounds of blueberries because you don't know the next time you're going to get blueberries. So whatever sugar you don't use, your body stores away as in the adipose tissue, so that way you have those energy reserves if you don't come across that berry patch again for a while. So today, we're not worried about finding that next blueberry patch. The thing with sugar is that it causes inflammation. So acute inflammation is good. You sprain your ankle, we want inflammation because it's part of the body's healing process. So we want that acute inflammation when you sprain your ankle. So we're bringing in the helper cells, we're bringing in the other products that will heal the injured area. Acute inflammation, we need it. It's a good thing. That chronic inflammatory state is where the body's just in this repetitive cycle, and it can't break that cycle. Excessive sugar consumption over a period of time can lead to this chronic inflammatory state. Years of being in a chronic inflammatory state can lead to chronic degeneration, chronic disease. So it's not something that happens overnight. It's those conditions that happen over years. Those where we're just in that chronic repetitive cycle, repetitive situation. So, and sugar is not the only thing. I mean, your processed grains, lots of other processed type foods can also lead to inflammation. Just a picture here, just showing, you know, all your organ systems can be affected, from the joints to the skin to the brain, the heart, lungs. They can all be affected with this inflammatory condition. You know, the modern American diet is geared towards inflammation. Ideally, we want our pH to be a little bit on the alkaline side. When we ingest a lot of sugar or ingest that food that causes inflammation, it's going to move us towards the acidic side of the scale. We ideally want to be on the alkaline side of the scale because then it reduces the inflammation. Some children and some cows. So that was a couple years ago. They helped me build that and they're very happy of it, so we had to get a picture of it. 1980, 1990, 2000, 2010, looking at where our food is coming from, you know, it's starting to become more and more centralized and more localized in the food that is available, and less people are getting to play in the system, so we're getting fewer people with broader control, so therefore our options are becoming more and more limited. However, we do have these farmers markets and the local food movements, which are starting to gain a lot of force and starting to be supported by the community, and that's really one way that we can ensure that we have a variety of food and fresh food and local food and good high quality food available to the people who are eating it. So there's definitely positives and challenges to local food, farmers market type food. You know, it helps to strengthen the local economy. As somebody who does sell food, it's hard. You know, you're out there every day, no matter how hot, no matter how cold, for $3.50 dozen of eggs, and you have somebody give you a hard time about it. Like, are you kidding me? So it's not easy. But, you know, that $3.50 that somebody gives me, I'm going to go to the feed mill and I'm going to buy my chicken feed off a local person. They're then going to go give it to somebody else who's local. Or I'm going to, in Indiana, you raise chickens. You have to, if you want to sell those chickens, you have to take it to a USDA processor. So I take my chickens that I raise for meat to a local guy who has all the inspections and has all the paperwork and is a USDA processor, and I pay him. And then he's going to turn around and pay somebody else, whereas are your food dollars leaving the community? So we're trying to keep it. Farmers market helps to keep it in the community. And the interaction is awesome. I've met so many good people, cool people when we were at the market, and even now, people who just come out to the farm. It's really awesome. A lot of these people who do appreciate what we're doing, and they'll tell me their stories. And then we have people that come out, they just want to help. Like, I used to live on a farm, or I used to do this, and it was really interesting, and I don't get the chance to do that anymore. Do you want me to help clean out your barn? Yeah, absolutely, sure. Here's a shovel. The seasonal eating, strawberries at the market, pretty good. Strawberries at the grocery store right now, not even close to what you're going to get when it's in season. You know, and that's one big problem, is the seasonality of it. Unless people are educated, unless they've thought about it, unless they've come to a talk like this, they might not realize that strawberries don't grow in Indiana in February. I've been at the market, and we raise hogs too, and most people love bacon. Our bacon sells very quickly, and I've had people ask me, well, why don't you just turn the whole hog into bacon? It's not an option, or I would. If I could figure out a way to do that, I would, because we can sell lots of bacon. You only get it from a certain part. So, but it's just it's that disconnect between your food and where your food comes from. Unless you've been around it or you've educated yourself, you have no idea. I mean, another challenge, if you're living in the city, like I lived most of my life, you don't want roosters crowing at 3 a.m. because they do. You know, you don't want cows running around at 3 a.m. knocking over whatever they knock over. They knock over pretty much anything when you get 1,200 pounds going in one direction. So just an option here with your alternative food cycle, where we're really trying to incorporate as many people as we possibly can. If you have no desire to be outside when it's 19 degrees, breaking ice off of water buckets, there are crazy people like myself and my family that do. So if you're not that person, but you enjoy this type of food and you enjoy this situation, just supporting those people, whether it's financially or whether it's like coming to a talk like this to help get the word out about different types of food options, that it doesn't all have to be mega corporation food options. It all helps, and it all helps to grow just another option of food. There are certain cases, certain situations where we need those mega corporations, but I think if we had a little bit of both, it would be really good. And just picture here, the economics. So this is coming from Chicago. Regional economic potential, $6.5 billion annually. $26 billion according to Chicago Metropolitan Agency, leaving that area. So there's a lot of potential. And the thing that I've learned when I've been around these small farmers, these small producers, is that they're geniuses. They can figure out ways to grow stuff and do stuff out of nothing. Like, they will take trash and somehow turn it into this amazing feeder water hydroponic system in 4 square feet in the corner of their garage. Like, they're just geniuses at being able to put stuff together and think through problems. And if you say, this is what I want, they'll figure out a way to make it happen. They can just do a lot of things with very little. So a goat, we don't have goats anymore. Then the goats got out and ate my wife's strawberries. So the goats left. She loves her strawberries, and she didn't love the goats quite as much. So social food being socially disconnected and socially interconnected. Can food increase these relationships? Is it invested in each other? How does it help the, not only family, but just people work together towards a common goal? Like, I've recently got involved with growing sorghum, and I've met these interesting people who are growing sorghum, and it's been really fun to be part of this group and work towards this common goal of something that I guess used to be pretty prevalent. Is that a lot of people used to grow sorghum, and but it's one of those things that kind of fell apart. With the socially interconnected food, food is very complex and it's an integral part of society, and we try to figure out how it fits into society. Whereas with the disconnected part, it's just a means to an end. I'm hungry, I eat. So just thinking about it on a broader, larger scale. The symbiosis of it, having food grow in its natural state, in its natural conditions, the seasonal eating. There's a lot of research and talk about that you should just eat food when it's in season. And that makes it difficult here. And we have a shorter growing season than a lot of areas of the country. But there is a symbiosis to it. Plants talk to each other. You plant certain plants next to each other, they'll actually prevent pests from growing on each other. If you plant certain plants next to each other, they're actually detrimental to each other. So there is a relationship not only among plants, but among plants and animals. So we try to recycle everything that we can. So if we have scraps from the garden or tomatoes that have gone bad, we throw it to the chickens and we throw it to the pigs. So that way we're trying to use everything that we have and not be wasteful. And just really trying to get as much out of what we have for the benefit of not only us, but the animals as well. And then finally, really what I want you to take away from this is that just to think about food on all levels that we possibly can. And whatever choice you make with your food is that you're conscious of that choice, and to do what you can when you're eating that food. I don't want you, no one's perfect. We're not all going to go out and save the world tomorrow by the food that we eat. But what we do eat, since it is something that we all do every day, is we can make little improvements and make little decisions that will hopefully help not only you on that cellular organ individual level, but also those around us on that community global level as well.
I don't know how to formulate my question. I'm assuming that the way we've eaten maybe has impacted why they don't fit.
Right.
So, like, say somebody's lactose intolerant or somebody's allergic to peanuts. If you went to a more healthy eating style, would those things reconfigure themselves so they...
I would think so. I mean, the body has that ability to make those enzymes. So I would think that it would. And let's say we talk about lactose intolerant. Think about the milk that you drink. What processes have been done to that milk? So is the lactose truly lactose, or has the lactose been modified just enough through those processes where it came from the cow until it was on your shelf in your refrigerator? So I mean, if you just tweak that lactose a little bit, it might not fit. This might be a circle instead of how it's supposed to fit together. So maybe that's the reason why someone's lactose intolerant. And there's varying degrees of lactose intolerance. So, yes, sir.
What's your thinking on the GMO food issue relative to safety of the food and feeding the masses?
Good question. There's I've read a lot about this, and I'm not 100% sure yet. One day I'm completely against GMOs. The next day I'm like, well, maybe there's something to it. I mean, they say we can't feed everybody. How do you know? It's kind of the question that I've come up with. And I mean, Courtney and I, we've debated it a lot and tried to figure out Personally, we try to stay away from GMOs. And when we buy feed, like chicken feed, we buy chicken feed, and we get non-GMO chicken feed. And we're erring on that side. But I mean, I'm surrounded by big-time farmers, and they are GMO. So I don't know. I haven't come to a single conclusion yet on it.
The economics is sticky.
Very, very sticky.
Big business.
Yes, sir.
I assume these enzymes, we have evolved biologically over time with what we eat, so it knows how to break down proteins and sugars and that kind of thing. What our enzymes are, how do they deal with more food now that's chemically altered or processed? Do we have those enzymes? Do they recognize that, or?
I think they recognize part of it. Because those chemicals, there has to be something in there that they're able to bind to, but I don't think we're getting complete breakdown into the products that we should. So it's doing part of the job.
So that whatever's excess just becomes waste? Or?
Yeah, you just excrete it.
This can really affect gut health and,
The enzymes?
yeah,
Mhm.
it's not doing its job.
Yeah. Yeah, enzymes are very
Sugar's a
important.
big-
Enzymes are very important.
yeah.
Like if you're on certain medications, you have to routinely go in and have your enzyme levels checked. And this is what they're checking. They're checking those certain enzymes to see, are they where they're supposed to be. Any other questions? Well, I appreciate you coming tonight, especially on a cold night, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was excellent.
Well, thank you. Thank you for coming.